Hi guys, welcome to the Chapter 11 Intelligence and Testing screencast. Let's get started. One of the things we did in class is we brainstormed a list of behaviors that were distinctively characteristic of intelligent people, as well as that which we thought were behaviors distinctively characteristic of unintelligent people, to try and determine a list of behaviors that we could use to define what we thought intelligence was. Robert Sternberg says there are three categories of behaviors that would characterize an intelligent person. That would be practical problem-solving skills, verbal skills, and social competence. And so you can take a look at the sheet marked 11.2 on Blackboard, and you can rate yourself. If you'd like to pause now, you can do that. And we can move on there. Obviously, there's no single agreed upon definition for intelligence. Most people agree that it is some quality of the ability to either get new information and or use that new information to create something new or to process it or to analyze. So unfortunately, there's no one definition, but most people will agree that it is your ability to use the knowledge that you've been able to get. So the history of intelligence testing is this. In France, right around 1905, there was a guy named Alfred Binet, and he had a colleague named Theodore Simon. They're Frenchies, and they decided that they wanted to figure out how to classify people, children in schools. They said, how are we going to fit people into the right classrooms? And so what they did is they looked at skills that average kids were able to do at any particular age. So what can the average 5-year-old do? What can the average 7-year-old do? What can the average 9-year-old do? So on and so forth. And what they did is they created all of these tests and gave them to a whole bunch of different people, and then they normed them. They found out what the average person could do. So if you could, as a 9-year-old, answer the questions that average 9-year-old could answer, then when they would say your mental age was 9. But your mental age then ended up being compared to your chronological age. So you can say that if your chronological age was 9 but your mental age was only 7, then you would be considered not so bright. And if the opposite was true, then vice versa. If you had a mental age of 9 but you were only 7 years old, you were considered as bright, and then you were assigned to a higher grade level. So ideally, at first, they wanted to just determine, in comparison to people your own age, where should you be placed in what particular schooling class. And he goes to the United States. In the United States, 1916, Louis Terman, who at Stanford University does some revision of the original Binet-Simon test, and he then calls it the new Stanford Binet test. And ultimately what they wanted to do here, there were 1916, right around World War I, there were a lot of people coming to the United States, a lot of immigrants coming to the United States, and we had to figure out what, as a country, we were going to do with them. Were they going to enter academia? Were they going to enter the workforce? Like, how do we classify these people? And same thing with the military. Where are people going to be best suited for the military? So, tests were a little bit revised, and the Stanford Binet test came to be. And there were 4 important areas that he included: verbal reasoning, abstract value reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and short-term memory. And he's the first person, Terman is the first person to determine what the idea of the IQ is. William Stern also does a little bit of work here and adds to the formula. He's the guy that comes up with the formula itself. It says that IQ is going to be your mental age divided by your chronological age times 100 to get rid of any decimal points. So if you have a mental age of 9 and a chronological age of 12, then your IQ would be 75. And then when mental age and chronological age are the same, IQ is 100, and we say that's average. That's how we get the average score for IQ. Excuse me. Today, we do modern intelligence testing based on David Wexler's work, and he says that there are going to be 2 important aspects that we look at, and that's going to be verbal, which is, again, the traditional type of questions that had been asked on different intelligence tests, but also performance aspect of the test, wherein people were going to assemble different puzzles and blocks and what's wrong with this picture and so on and so forth. And so he creates the WAIS-R, which is the adult version of the test, and the WISC-R, which is the childhood version of the test. And those tests are normed, so the average is 100, and that most people will fall between 2 standard deviations of the average. That means that most IQ scores range from 70 to 130, meaning that below 70 would be considered mentally retarded, and above 130 would be considered genius level, or at least at that period of time. Now, it's important to understand the difference between an aptitude test and an achievement test. Aptitude tests are in intended to predict future performance on different things. So IQ tests are supposed to be aptitude tests to predict things, but unfortunately they don't always end up predicting anything. A lot of times they will be achievement tests. They'll reflect what somebody already knows. And a good example of that would be the Scholastic Aptitude Test, or the SAT, which has aptitude right in the title, but it isn't an aptitude test at all. It's really an achievement test reflecting what a person already knows. And we can tell that that's the case because you can study for it, and the more times you take it, the better you can get at it. And you aren't able to be successful on the SAT unless you've reached a certain level of schooling. So you have to have a base level of knowledge to be successful there. Now, if we're going to create a good test, and we know that most tests are going to be fallible in any way, shape, or form, but we strive to make the best test that we can. The good tests are going to be reliable, valid, and objective. And reliable means the same thing as consistent. Are you going to get the same results every time you take the test? A valid test is going to be accurate. Are you actually testing what you think you're testing? Are you testing, for instance, if I give an IQ test to somebody who speaks Spanish, but I give them a test in English, am I really testing their IQ, or am I testing their ability to read English? If I think that I'm testing IQ, but it's really testing their ability to read English, then we would say that test is not valid. There's no validity to that test. So some tests are designed to measure constructs, things that you can't really define objectively, like intelligence. And construct validity, how valid, how accurate a test is based on a construct, is determined by comparing scores on tests with other scores, similar tests. So you use two similar tests. So you would use maybe the SAT and the ACT and compare those two tests to determine whether or not intelligence is actually being tested there. You can also look at criterion validity, and this is where you're trying to determine if the criteria are actually, you're testing the criteria that you think you're testing. So you can take something like an SAT score and you can compare it to future performance like a GPA in college to determine whether or not SATs actually predicted success in college. And they're overwhelmingly finding that SAT scores aren't necessarily going to correlate with GPAs and further success, future success in college. And then a test has to be objective. That means that it's completely unbiased, excuse me, unaffected by the person giving the test, and it's going to be reached by all members of the group taking the test equally. And they have to be standardized, which means that you have to be able to give them across large groups of people. You can't be, one person giving the SAT can't be affecting or changing an administration of the SAT in a different time or place or state. It has to be standard. So if you can access document 11.8a on Blackboard, you can see an example of a possible, and I say possible, intelligence type test. Okay, welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about the theories of intelligence. Now, the first theory of intelligence we're going to discuss is Spearman's general factor, or his idea of the general factor of intelligence. Spearman's G, it becomes known as. Spearman says that there is a general factor of intelligence, this G factor, this kind of untouchable thing that kind of overarches all of our intelligence. The thing that energizes our ability to think and be aware of things. We also have a special factor of intelligence, the S factor, and that's going to be your specific talents or skills that you have at any one given area. Spearman says that you can have S, a special intelligence, without having a high general intelligence. But if you have high general intelligence, you're going to have better special intelligence. Okay, the example I have here is Jason Campbell versus Tom Brady. Jason Campbell was criticized very highly for being maybe not the sharpest crayon in the box when it came to reading defenses and when it came to adapting to what was going on in any given play on the football field. But he did have the special intelligence of, the skill to be able to be a good quarterback. Tom Brady, though, has S. He has that special skill and that special intelligence, but he also had a higher level of G, general intelligence, at least people claim, compared to Jason Campbell, and I think Spearman would argue that that is the thing that makes him the better quarterback, or at least one thing that makes him a better quarterback. Later on, Raymond Cattell tries to say that G is really our fluid intelligence and our crystallized intelligence, which you'll remember fondly if you think back to chapter 10 on our ability to think. But the problem is that most psychologists agree G exists, it's real, but they don't agree on what G actually is. It's this I don't know what, this you can't really define it sort of a thing. And so people who come along later make every attempt to try and define it. such as Thurston. He says we've got 7 primary mental abilities that if you can do these things, you have to be able to do these things in order to have high intelligence or high level performance. Spatial ability, speed of perception, ability to use and work with numbers, understanding verbal meaning words, memory, can you use many and varied words and word fluency, and your ability to reason. Guilford comes along and says we have 3 dimensions to what our intellect is. We have the content of anything we're working with. There's the operation, what you do with that thing, and then there's the product resulting from what you've done with that content. And since there are 4 kinds of content, 5 possible operations, and 6 categories of products, according to Guilford, there's 120 identifiable intellectual things that we can do as opposed to Thurston's idea of 7. So here they are: figural, symbolic, semantic, behavioral, cognition, memory, divergent thinking, convergent thinking, evaluation. And products would be unit, class, relation, system, transformation, and implication. I went through those very quickly, but they're fairly self-explanatory if you go through and you read them. Let me know if you have any questions about that. But again, you take all those things and multiply them together, and that's a whole lot of things that we can do in order to be able to be considered intelligent, a lot more than had previously been thought. Then in 1983, Howard Gardner changes the game. He says it's an all or nothing concept. Intelligence is either you are or you aren't. And then he comes along and says, no, it's not that. It's not are you intelligent or not. It's how are you intelligent. Everybody's intelligent, just where's your area of specialty located. And he would say some people have many areas where they're good at, and some people have one that they're really kind of focused in. He says that these multiple intelligences are linguistic, word smart, logical or mathematical thinkers, number or reasoning smart, spatial thinkers, picture smart people, people who are musically smart, bodily kinesthetic or movement smart. Often you'll see dancers or athletes being that kind of smart. Interpersonal smart, relationships. Intrapersonal smart, knowing yourself. Naturalist or spiritualist smart, and existentialist smart, like what's the meaning of life and why are we here. And moral smart, what's right, what's wrong. And again, you can pause me, go to Blackboard and take the assessment there. And welcome back, if you are back. Gardner studies savant syndrome as well. It's one of the things that leads him to come up with this theory, and that is looking at someone who is usually has a psychological disorder such as autism, very limited mental ability, but has an exceptional specific skill. And again, this video that we watched in class is available, that you can watch that now. It's about 47 minutes if you decide to watch the whole thing, although you don't have to watch the whole thing to get kind of the picture out of it. Sternberg comes along and says, okay, well, wait a second, we got a triarchic theory. And the triarchic theory says that you can't use intelligence tests because it doesn't really assess all aspects of intelligence. Intelligence is really about problem solving, reasoning, using your skills in the real world. So he develops the triarchic theory of intelligence that says we have analytical intelligence or componential, and that's going to be your traditional view of what intelligence has been. But he says we also have creative intelligence, experiential. Can you create something novel? And practical intelligence, contextual, which says can you use common sense in different situations? Can you know how to behave in particular situations? There's an entire area that's been ignored, and that's emotional intelligence. Sullivan and Meyer do studies there that say that can you perceive, can you express, can you understand or regulate different emotions that exist, and that would be, you know, are you hijacked by your emotions, or can you overcome what you're going through? Can you relate to other people or take the general, I guess, emotional temperature of a group that you might be in? So what's intelligence? Well, it depends on who you talk to. General public is going to pretty much point to good verbal skills, social gratefulness, and problem solving. But academics are going to say, yeah, problem solving and verbal skills, but practical intelligence is really the thing that applies. Okay, here's where we had our none of the above article discussion, so you might want to refer to that because, well, we discussed these things here. And then we looked at the issues that existed because the article kind of illustrate. Is it nature versus nurture that illustrates or determines our intelligence? Is the Flynn effect generational? Is it real? Is it constant? Does it change? As well as bias. Most tests are inherently biased towards some minority groups, and so you can take some of the bias tests that we have online and see how it makes you feel, actually. And that's the end. Good luck on your test. Let me know if you guys have any questions. It's been a pleasure. Bye.